Greetings. This is Dr. Noni Davis, and I am here in Dr. Noni's Shule and give thanks. I want to just acknowledge that this is Sya Academy, a private school owned and operated initially with me and my parents, the late William Edward Davis and my mother Sylvia Davis, and we have been operating for 30 years here. And so this is our Kwanzaa season, as I've talked about this before on the podcast. And of course, I got my Kanara, went ahead and pulled it out so everybody could see. You've got the Nkeka and the Kanara and the Mishu Masaba and the Kokombe Cha Moja and my Muhindi and my fruits Mazao and a gift, a sky full of elephants. This book is amazing. And then, and so those are the seven things, and this would be the Zawadi, a gift. And so all of this are, your main parts of Kwanzaa, the setup. And usually we include a bandera, which is a red, black, and green flag. But I got my red, my black, and my green on today, so my little red lipstick too. Anyway, so I just wanted to talk about Kwanzaa a little bit, but through the lens of what we have accomplished with each one of these, the Nguza Saba, which is the Moja, Kujichakulia, Ujima, Ujama, Nia, Kuumbi, Imani. And so I spoke about John Canoe last time, and John Canoe is a harvest tradition that I discussed that came from Africa, as early as ancient Egypt. And the idea of harvest traditions are, found here in the Americas, in North America and South America, and all throughout the Caribbean, right? And they're all grounded in a reverence for African deities and spiritual entities associated with harvest. And then it's also a time to honor the ancestors and give thanks to the Creator for all of the blessings and of the past and preparation for the future harvest. So I was watching this YouTube video called Without History, and the episode is called Black People Are the Heroes of Reality. And I was like, wow. So how did we demonstrate this superhero space through Kwanzaa? So I said, let me figure out how I can write this out. So it was interesting because it covered all that I teach here at the school, right? So I'm going to start with Umoja, which is our black candle. And I usually go black and red for black is for the people, red for the struggles that we have to endure, and green is for the outcomes, the future, the prosperity, and all the things. So you're black and you have to work hard, and then you get the reward. Work hard, reward, whatever, how you want to say it. But Umoja means unity, to strive for and maintain unity in the family. Community, nation, and race, believing strength comes from togetherness. And so Africans were the original creators of family, community, and governance. The traditions of family begin with marital practices, and we know some people have polygamy, whatever, and where you have a man with several wives. But you also had naming ceremonies for babies. And these were supposed to be spiritual time, meditating on who the child was, speaking with your elders, speaking with your spiritual advisors to see what the purpose of this child is. And then the name would be a reflection of that. And so, what is the child's purpose and everything? And also, how do we guide this child through their life? And so the principle of Ma'at also was one of our guiding principles. So you have family, you had, the governing structure, which was harmony and balance, justice and order, truth and righteousness, reciprocity and prosperity. So even though it may not have been Ma'at all over the continent, that framework of thinking about how to interact with each other was what we what was practiced in our in and on the continent. And then you, and also with the goal of developing good character. So how do we interact with one another within our community? These were the governing structures. There were not the roles between husbands and wives were not control. It was more complementary. These are my gifts, these are your gifts. What do we do? How do we merge our our collective gifts together to build a family? And so it's more of a democratic value system versus one person is on the top and one person is on the bottom. Everybody knew what their role was and everyone contributed. So there was no competition between uh, people. Now I'm talking about pre Arab, pre Christian values. And this may not have been with every group, but there was this kind of consistency of interaction with male and female. So then, even along through generationals, you had and this intergenerational thing that happened. You know, the grandparents were in the village with the youngest, and so there was an ability to interact with each other, transferring skill sets from one generation to the other. There was this high respect for elders, and and then there was also this understanding that elders are responsible for passing on information. So we had, you know, our these systems of family and community and governance, which you still see in a lot of indigenous places, were this is what we did. And so that was our umoja, unity. How do we create communities that are solid, that are um, reflective of cultural traditions, and how do we instill within our children understanding of what the past was and what the future is, and now what is your role in the community? And we do practice that here at St. Sya. I am the grandmama, and and one of our teachers has her infant here with us. So we have an infant, we have the children in between those ages, and then they have my staff and or the parents of these children, and then you have the parents of and the grandparents of the children in the school, and then and we're all working together, to make sure the children get everything they need. And I try to promote an egalitarian kind of a democratic environment where I'm not um, uh, heavy-handed. I give, these young teachers, and you got these ideas, and my goal is to help you execute it to the best, but it's not to tell you tear down your ideas and your approaches. Give them the space. What is the most effective way of getting this done? And they're amazing. They have ideas that I would not have come up with, and because I'm in generational difference, but that's what we do. And so then we go to Kuji Chakalia, and like I said, I always do the red candle. Some people go straight one side, down the other, whatever, but mine is the red candle, and then I have this balance thing too, where I like both. So I can't. Some of it's me, but Kuji Chakalia means self determination. Oh, I forgot to show the symbol for. Where did I put my? Oh, what did I do with it? Oh man, I must have taken it to the other space. All right, so Kuji Chakalia, self determination, is to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves, right? So, as I stated before, the people of ancient Egypt called their country the land of the black people, right? And so we have always defined ourselves before we even came to this country, right? This continent. Or, for those of us who were brought over here, because, we know that black people were traveling everywhere. We migrated everywhere. But we have had to fight to practice Kuji Chakalia under this regime that we've been under for the last 500 years, right? So since our forced enslavement in this country, we've had to fight to practice Kuji Chakalia. And we moved from the N word to colored to Negro to black because of the Black Power movement. And then from Jesse Jackson I think in the 80s he advocated for us to call ourselves African American. And of course, I consider myself to be an African American. But anyway, that's what they did. So, this was our journey to naming ourselves. We went from what they called us to what we called ourselves. Um, and we've had to carve out our self identification, although it has been a struggle. I said, for example, even to wear your hair, African American women, there were laws that prevented us from wearing our hair out. Apparently, white men were messing with us, and so we had to. Were forced to cover our hair, and so when we covered our hair, then we made all these beautiful, use these scarves to make all these beautiful. Wraps, and then that became a problem. We put feathers and beads and all kinds of stuff on these hair wraps. But every time they did something, we said, "Okay, we got to do it, but we're gonna own it." And then we had to embrace our hair. I remember when we came up with this happy to be nappy kind of idea a few years ago. We choosing afros and locks and braids. And then we had to fight for the Crown Act, which allows us to wear our hair wherever we want, and the state that our hair is professional. And that doesn't mean you go with your hair unkempt, but you have a right to wear your hair out the way it comes out your head, right? Our music is a reflection of our Kuji Chakalia self-determination. We took our African rhythms and indigenous rhythms from here, and we created a whole genre of music. And I talked about that last week. And a reflection of our passion. Our music is a reflection of our passion, our intelligence, our creativity, our spirituality, and our intensity. Because Black people are intense. And last week we learned that the spirituals were the most influential, expansive, and influential genre of music. Our music is the most influential around the world. Hip hop, jazz, blues, rock and roll, and gospel. All of that is coming from the African American self-determination. We create our own stuff. We have influenced fashion, art, uh, language, and we are the definition of cool, right? And we are the amazing athletes in every single sport we enter. Our talent exceeds all expectations, and we are now at an impasse to continue to demonstrate our greatness in everything. We talked about our architects, and then, of course, what we have done in science and the inventions, how we have, our education and systems of governance that we created. And like I said before, we began with egalitarian uh, communities. And I'm not saying we were perfect, but those were the goals that we set within our communities, and we're reestablishing that legacy. The next one is Ujamaa. Ujamaa is collective working responsibility to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together. This is also an African legacy. We created strong communities on the continent prior to European contact. In the Americas, our ability to do this was, of course, hindered. But then, how do we overcome these blocks in our ability to communicate? Because we had to remember we had different languages, we came from different ethnic groups, and we were all on these ships. So what did we do? Well, we created Creole. Okay, I'm Fuller, you're Mandinke, you're Wolof, you're Mende, you're Crew. Hey, what are we gonna do? We're gonna take this English language, we're gonna make it into something else. And so Ebonics, whatever you want to call it, African American English language, I can't remember what they call it, but we got to go get you. We took our language patterns and imposed it on over English, and we created our own ELA. That is collective working responsibility, in my opinion. We created Creole, we created coded language to communicate with each other. We revolted We self-emancipated. We created our own spiritual practices using white men's religion as a cover. We created hoodoo, voodoo, and vodou. Uh, we fought in the Revolutionary War, the French and Indian War. Yes, I didn't. I had to go check that. And Africans were fighting on the British side in the French and Indian War, and we fought in the Civil War. And all of these were for our freedom. And then after we got our freedom, we built towns all over this nation, and many of us escaped bombings, flooding, all kinds of white violence, while and unfortunately, while others did not. But we created schools, businesses, hospitals, libraries, universities, institutions that uplifted our community. So when I think of historically how would Ujima look like, that's what we did. We maintained our community because we constantly found ways to build our communities, uh, reestablish a community amongst ourselves. So December 29th, okay, so this is the 26th, the 27th, 28th, the 29th is Ujamaa, cooperative economics, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses and to profit from them together. And so we created major business districts. Um, we created real estate firms, architectural firms, construction businesses, insurance companies, barbershops, beauty salons, haberdasheries, boutiques, grocery stores, daycares, and schools, dental and doctor's offices. And then we also have to remember that, even folks who I was listening to a conversation yesterday. Cooperative economics doesn't always be an exchange in money. Sometimes it's just an exchange in service. How, people babysit and taking care of your children and you can't afford it. And, sometimes I have to do that here as well. We have children everybody can't always pay. So I have to create a sliding scale to make sure that everybody can make it. And then, volunteerism or whatever. And so we had we created an economic system that sometimes was money and sometimes it was just supporting and take care of our neighbor. And so that's what we had. And then to me, integration uh disrupted some of that, and it had a severe economic impact on our community. But today we're beginning to recover. I believe that we understand, okay, I see where we are. I see who we live among. And so we're gonna have to recalibrate and redo this thing. And so then with December 30th, and that would be, let's see, Nia. So Nia is purpose, right? So to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. So that's where I believe we are now, as descendants of Africa, of the original people, even here, the collective of folks, indigenous people, Native Americans, and Africans who were here that were in this space. Everywhere on the planet, Africans are making tremendous strides in reclaiming our traditional greatness. And so you see Africa is rising. You're seeing folks casting off their colonizers, kicking them out of Africa, regaining their identity. I saw a powerful video on Instagram the other day, and now with indigenous people who are now advocating for or creating a collective between as far as Greenland, as far north as Greenland, to Canada, to the States, the West, the East, and the South. And then they included, Mexico all the way down, the Latin, what we would call Latin America, all the way down to Panama. And then they said, we're going to keep on going down to Venezuela, all the way down to Argentina and Chile. And it was a powerful video of how indigenous people are recognizing that this is their land. and they are not immigrants here because they are the original people here. I'm like, ooh, everybody getting ready, everybody. But also with back to African Americans, we're wearing our indigenous clothes, we're wearing our African hairstyles, we are doing things that reflect our cultural heritage. We're learning African languages. I am learning um, Swahili, um, and I have books for children that are on Fula and Wolof, and what else did I get? Mandinke? I'm not sure, but I've got in my classroom, I've got numbers, Yoruba languages, Mende alphabet, Ethiopian alphabet, all on the walls in the classroom. I have those things are in the classroom, so for my kids to see. So we're wearing our clothes that reflect our cultural heritage, learning African languages, learning our ancient history, and like I said, I was listening to this podcast the other day. What is it called again? It was so funny. Uh, um, Black, no, Without History, and they have a lot of stuff on there. And so we're gaining our spiritual practices. We're going back to how our ancestors saw who God was and how did they practice that. We're honoring our ancestors. Um, People are traveling to the Caribbean and developing relationships with folks on the continent. So you have a lot of trans interaction between Africans, Caribbeans, and African American diaspora. So, and we're loving our melanated selves and celebrating our culture, and so cultural traditions. And so we're on our way back, taking it step by step by step. And so then on the 31st, is Kuumba, and that's our creativity. Kuumba creativity to do always as much as we can in the way that we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. So we know that Africa has always was the origin of technology. We smelted iron. We created we studied astronomy. We created the Ishango bone. We created the dendera to track time. The calendar year. We invented mathematics. We created calculus. Whether I don't care what nobody says, we had to figure that out. We had to do calculus in order to build these pyramids and to build these tekens. You had to understand physics and calculus to do that. We I saw something the other day about how African patterns in our fabric in our clothing, African American women and men, when we were doing these carvings and these or sewing these designs on the fabric. These fabrics had symbolism. So you had the Dinkra symbols, you had uh, in our mud cloth, and I can't remember what they call it, the African word for it, but all of these fabrics had symbols that meant something, that represented something. They were coded language. And even in the middle of wars, African women in Nigeria were sewing these codes or printing these codes on the fabric and communicating, things like the enemy, where the enemy was, what the plans were, all kinds of stuff that would be secret information. So that was our technology. We also it was created the internet contemporarily. I was talking about how not we didn't create the internet, but we participated in the creation of the internet. We have been contributed to Wi-Fi, GPS, all kinds of technology from ancient times to current times. And a collective consciousness. We've created a collective consciousness of Blackness because now we know we can see what is happening to all of us, not only with indigenous people, but Asians and Africans and Americas, all of us are now seeing, what in the global South and even in the global North, when you have these indigenous populations there, hey, we are under some crazy space and everybody has had the same experience. And so we are all collectively moving towards a resistance, a unity in spite of Western resistance to divide us. We're and there is a collective div, resistance by Western media. You have these. I don't know if anybody has heard, but some of these divisions on between Black men and Black women, between Africans and Hispanics, between uh, um, different populations, the working class versus the upper class or middle class. I hate those words, but anyway, and elders versus youth, educated versus skill. All of these are being created by bots, people who are in different countries who are being paid to create arguments and start fights on Instagram or on YouTube and all of that to break up because they see the Western culture sees that we are elevating. And if we unify, if all of us unify, not just African Americans, but folks with other cultures, cultural ethnicities, they gonna be in trouble. And I think it's too late. I think that they outdo themselves. And so while those destructive patterns have distracted some of us, most of us seem to be able to navigate these discord wars and rise above it. And so that's what I think of when I think of Kuumba, our creativity, the things that we're doing as much as we can, in the way that we can, in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than what we inherited. We are moving towards a space where we are. I mean, I can see that. I can see that this next generation, if we do what we're supposed to do with this next generation, teaching them and telling them. I always tell my kids, you all are the generation that are going to have to deal with this foolishness that's coming, and you're going to be the ones that not necessarily rebuild, but to reconstruct. We can't have this foolishness again. We got to stop it. And so that is what they are. And they have to figure it out. They're gonna have to come up. What is the Constitution supposed to really look like? I have a problem with anything that starts with all men are created equal. No, we need to all people, and I believe all living organisms. Because stop abusing animals and stop, leave. And how about the earth? You can't keep doing all this foolishness with the earth. And so we gonna have to change all of that. And it's time to do it. We got to make it better. January 1st is Imani. And so that is to believe with all our heart in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, in the righteousness and victory of our struggle. And I think that this is what we have always practiced. And this is why we are still here. If we had not practiced faith, we would not make it. We have had to have faith. Faith is believing that which you cannot see. I'm going to be free one day. And if I'm not going to be free, my children will be free. And so we are here because our great-grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents believe that we can accomplish these things. Those of us who have degrees and all that, it's not because we are smarter than our ancestors. We have literally, in my opinion, I believe that my ancestors must have been part of the Timbuktu, the empire, Guinea. My ancestors are from Guinea-Bissau and Mende and Kru and all those. A lot of those people moved or were part of the empire, the Mali, Ghana, Mali, Songhai empires. And like I said, Timbuktu is there. So me being a teacher is not, is maybe actually in my ancestral line. And what we're doing is we are moving back. into these spaces. So happy Kwanzaa, everybody, and I hope that you see how we have always practiced these different principles of Kwanzaa, the Singuza Saba, and may we continue to do that and incorporate these principles and even once we have achieved our complete and total freedom. Amen. Ashe. Happy Kwanzaa. Oh no, what did I do? Okay. Oh no. How do I exit out of here?
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I know my mom.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Sya student.